Rain lashed against the tall windows of the DC newsroom, a gray haze settling over the city like a warning of things to come. Inside the Fox News studio, the lights glinted sharply off polished surfaces as Attorney General Pam Bondi took her seat, posture immaculate, gaze unwavering. The storm outside mirrored the storm inside the political world, tense, unpredictable, electric. As the camera rolled, Bondi's voice cut through the broadcast, smooth but carrying a sharpened edge. "Words have consequences," she said, her tone deliberate, almost surgical. Each syllable hung in the air, heavier than its mere meaning, a message that reached far beyond the television screen. To the casual viewer, it could have been a general statement about political discourse, but those who knew the intricate, often ruthless corridors of Washington understood immediately. This was a warning, a calculated move aimed at Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett. In a modest office overlooking the Capitol dome, Crockett leaned forward, her hand gripping the edge of the desk. The room was dim, lit only by the soft glow of a desk lamp and the flicker of the television screen. The words echoed in her mind. Words have consequences. Her jaw tightened, a slow burn of anger igniting behind her eyes. This wasn't casual political rhetoric. It was thinly veiled intimidation, a signal that challenging Bondi could invite retaliation, public or otherwise. Crockett's mind raced through the implications. Bondi's reach wasn't theoretical. Her history as Attorney General was riddled with selective investigations, political maneuvering, and whispered threats to those who opposed her. The statement was a reminder that power in Washington came with unspoken rules, and that defiance had its cost. Yet Crockett's resolve did not waver. If anything, the warning fueled her determination. Outside, the rain continued to hammer, the streets muffling the distant hum of traffic and sirens. In that quiet moment, Crockett envisioned the paths ahead: legal challenges, public statements, strategic alliances. Each step would be measured, precise, and unflinching. She knew the cameras were watching, the political pundits dissecting every gesture, every word. But she refused to let fear dictate her actions. Across the studio, Bondi's expression remained cold, the slightest hint of a smirk tugging at her lips as the broadcast continued. Viewers might see composure, insiders would see the calculated threat beneath the surface. And on the other side of the city, Crockett's eyes narrowed. "If you think I'll be silenced," she muttered, voice low but firm, "you've underestimated me." The storm outside showed no signs of abating, its rhythm matching the tension building between two powerful women on a collision course. One broadcast, one warning, one decision. Washington would never look the same again. The morning light cut through the tall windows of the Capitol like a spotlight on history, illuminating the chamber where Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett prepared to make her stand. The echoes of Pam Bondi's warning still lingered in her mind, but she refused to let them dictate her next move. Today, she would reclaim the narrative, not with threats or insinuations, but with truth, courage, and unwavering conviction. The chamber hummed with the quiet tension of anticipation. Staffers whispered behind polished desks, aides fidgeted with notes, and reporters adjusted their cameras, sensing that something monumental was about to unfold. Crockett stepped onto the floor, the familiar weight of responsibility pressing on her shoulders, yet there was a spark in her eyes that no storm could extinguish. She raised her chin, drawing a slow, steadying breath, and let her voice carry across the room. "He's a crook!" Her declaration rang out, sharp and undeniable. The chamber froze. Conversations halted mid-sentence. The words pierced the hum of bureaucratic indifference, demanding attention, demanding accountability. Crockett's stance was unyielding, her eyes scanning the room, daring anyone to challenge her resolve. Some members shifted uneasily, wary of aligning with a bold accusation in the glare of public scrutiny. Others, inspired, straightened in their seats, a silent chorus of support swelling behind her. She could feel it, the invisible energy of conviction spreading like wildfire, touching those who had long feared speaking out. A colleague leaned closer, voice low but urgent. "Jasmine, are you sure about this?" "I've never been more certain," she replied, her tone calm yet edged with steel. "If we don't call out corruption, who will?" Her words carried the weight of both law and morality, the dual responsibility that came with being a public servant. She spoke not just to the chamber, but to the millions watching from living rooms and offices across the country, her message clear: courage is contagious, and silence is complicity. Outside, news alerts began popping up on phones and screens, headlines flashing across networks. Crockett calls out corruption in the Capitol. Bold move stuns lawmakers. Across social media, citizens debated, applauded, and criticized, but one thing was undeniable. Jasmine Crockett had seized the moment, transforming fear into defiance. She paused for a heartbeat, letting the chamber absorb the gravity of her statement. Then, lowering her voice slightly, she added, "Power is not meant to protect the guilty. It exists to serve justice." Murmurs of agreement spread. Eyes that had once avoided hers now locked with hers. The subtle nods and clenched fists, a quiet acknowledgement of shared purpose. Crockett had not only spoken, she had ignited a spark that would not easily be extinguished. As she stepped back from the podium, the weight of what she had done began to settle in. She had faced the storm head-on, and the storm was watching, waiting, calculating. Yet Crockett's resolve remained unbroken, and somewhere in the shadows of power, Pam Bondi knew that this defiance would have consequences, but not the ones she expected. Later that evening, away from the glare of cameras and the echoing halls of Congress, Jasmine Crockett sat in her office, the soft hum of the city outside a stark contrast to the storm raging in her mind. A message had arrived, simple, chilling, and unambiguous. Tread carefully. No signature, no hint of origin, just those two words, a whispered warning that carried the weight of power and influence. She stared at the note, letting the gravity sink in. Every instinct screamed caution, yet Crockett's resolve did not waver. She knew that the corridors of Washington were filled with such threats, subtle yet calculated, designed to intimidate, to sow doubt, to bend strong wills. But Crockett had never been one to bend. Her team gathered around, faces tense, eyes reflecting the anxiety that ran through the room. Advisors and aides had heard rumors, felt the undercurrents of power, but nothing prepared them for the stark, personal nature of this message. "It's from Bondi," one whispered, the words heavy with fear. "We all know her reach. This isn't just a warning. It's a line in the sand." Crockett's gaze met theirs, steady, unwavering. "Then we cross it," she said firmly. Her voice was calm, measured, but beneath it burned a fire. "If threats define our actions, then we've already lost. I won't let fear dictate justice." Behind closed doors, the discussion turned to strategy. How could they protect themselves while pushing forward? Every legal move, every public statement, every congressional hearing had to be calculated, precise, unassailable. They reviewed Bondi's history, the selective prosecutions, the subtle intimidation of witnesses, the political machinations carefully disguised as law enforcement. Each incident was a thread in a larger tapestry, one that Crockett was determined to unravel. Outside the office, the city pulsed with life, indifferent to the quiet but potent battle unfolding within the walls of power. The message loomed over Crockett like a shadow, but it was also a spark. She saw it for what it was, an admission of fear from the other side, a recognition that her voice carried weight, that her actions had consequences far beyond herself. "I want a full assessment," Crockett commanded, turning toward her aides with quiet authority. "Every move she's made, every ally she has, every potential avenue for retaliation. We need to understand exactly what we're up against." Her team nodded, scribbling notes, checking records, and compiling evidence. Crockett leaned back in her chair, the note still on her desk, staring at her like a dark promise. She exhaled slowly, letting the tension roll off her shoulders. "This is just the beginning," she murmured, more to herself than anyone else. "They think they can intimidate me, silence me, bend the law to their will. They've underestimated one thing. Courage has a louder voice than fear." And with that, Crockett began plotting the path forward, each step a careful blend of strategy, defiance, and unwavering commitment to justice. The threat had been unveiled, but so had her determination, and Washington would soon learn that Jasmine Crockett did not yield. The room was dimly lit, the soft glow of a single desk lamp casting long shadows across the walls. Maps, legal briefs, and news clippings were spread out like a battlefield strategy. Each piece a thread in the intricate web of power Crockett was determined to untangle. Around the table sat a small cadre of trusted allies, fellow lawmakers, legal experts, and a handful of seasoned advisors who understood that the stakes were far higher than any one political maneuver. Crockett leaned over the table, her fingers tracing the path of influence that Bondi had carved through the corridors of Washington. She spoke in a low, precise tone, measured, but charged with urgency. She's not just an attorney general, she's a strategist, a puppet master. Every move she makes is calculated to intimidate, to dismantle those who oppose her. One of the legal experts nodded grimly. Selective prosecutions, suppression of whistleblowers, weaponized investigations. This isn't theory, it's documented history. Bondi has created a climate where dissent is punished and accountability is optional. Crockett's eyes scanned the room, landing on each ally in turn. "We can't just react," she said, voice firm. "We need to anticipate. Every decision, every public statement, every legal step must be deliberate. She's playing chess, and we can't afford to be pawns." A senior aide adjusted his glasses and tapped a folder. "There's more. The Weaponization Working Group. It's not just a rumor. Internal reports suggest it's designed to target political adversaries, using legal authority as leverage. This is the kind of institutional reach we're up against." Crockett's jaw tightened. The room fell silent for a heartbeat, each person absorbing the weight of the revelation. Outside, the distant hum of the city seemed to fade, leaving only the quiet intensity of strategy, resolve, and looming confrontation. "This is bigger than politics," Crockett continued, her voice now carrying the weight of moral clarity. "This is about preserving the integrity of the system. If we allow intimidation and selective justice to dictate action, democracy itself is compromised." The allies exchanged determined glances. In that dimly lit room, a quiet resolve took shape. They began to outline a plan, documenting every action, gathering evidence, preparing to expose the patterns of influence that had allowed threats like this to exist unchecked. Each note, each document, each recollection would serve as a weapon, not of violence, but of truth. Crockett paused, leaning back slightly, eyes narrowing as she considered the task ahead. "We're not just fighting for me," she said, tone unwavering. "We're fighting for anyone who's been silenced, anyone who's been intimidated by the weight of unchecked power. This isn't personal, it's systemic, and we will hold the system accountable." The group nodded in unison, the gravity of the mission settling over them. Outside, the city carried on, unaware that a quiet revolution was being plotted in a shadowed office, a coalition of conscience preparing to confront one of the most formidable figures in American politics. For Crockett, there was no turning back. The stakes had never been higher, and the allies in the shadows were ready to step into the light. The Capitol's marble halls were silent now, save for the echo of footsteps as Jasmine Crockett moved with purpose, files clutched in her hands. Each document, each case note, each precedent was a weapon in a legal arsenal she was meticulously assembling. Bondi's influence was vast, her reach insidious, but Crockett had never faced power she couldn't analyze, dissect, and confront. Today, she would transform knowledge into action. She settled into her office, spreading out the evidence like a general surveying a battlefield. Selective prosecutions, dismissal of key investigators, partisan manipulation of legal frameworks. Each instance was a testament to a system warped by personal agendas. The pattern was clear, the strategy unmistakable: intimidation, distracte, on and control. Crockett's legal counsel leaned in, voice low but firm. "If we challenge this properly, we can expose not just the threats but the structural corruption. It has to be airtight. Every motion, every subpoena, every argument must anticipate retaliation." She nodded, eyes scanning the pages, memorizing the nuances, the loopholes, the leverage points. "We'll start by documenting the precedents she's set, the patterns she's established, public hearings, congressional oversight, and, if necessary, federal suits. We'll make sure the law is on our side, completely, undeniably." Outside, the city buzzed with the usual chaos. But within these walls, time was measured in legal strategy. Each phone call, each email, each confidential meeting was part of a chess match. Every action needed foresight. Every reaction could set off waves far beyond the immediate courtroom. Crockett understood that her challenge wasn't just against Bondi. It was against the inertia of a system designed to favor those in power. Her assistant approached quietly, sliding a folder across the desk. "Here are the reports from previous investigations she's influenced," they said. "Also, witness statements that corroborate the selective nature of her actions." Crockett's gaze sharpened as she sifted through the papers. Patterns emerged, connections between political loyalty and legal immunity, timelines showing the suppression of dissent, documentation of threats thinly veiled as administrative oversight. Each revelation strengthened her resolve. "We'll use the system against itself," Crockett said, voice calm but carrying the weight of certainty. "Every overreach, every misstep, every abuse of authority will be highlighted. We'll show the American people the truth behind the facade." Her counsel hesitated. "It won't be easy. Bondi has allies in key positions. The media may spin this. The public may not understand the nuance." Jasmine leaned forward, eyes steady, unflinching. "Nuance isn't needed when the evidence speaks for itself. We're not arguing politics, we're arguing justice. And justice doesn't bend for fear." As night fell over Washington, Crockett's office glowed with the quiet intensity of preparation. Maps of influence, legal briefs, and annotated case files surrounded her like the walls of a fortress. The legal battlefield was set, and she was ready to march into it. Every calculated move, every strategic confrontation would bring her closer to exposing the truth. The fight had just begun, but Crockett's resolve was absolute, her focus unshakable, and the nation would soon witness a defiance that even the most powerful could not ignore. The morning after Crockett's legal preparations, the city awoke to an undercurrent of unrest that seemed to pulse through every street, office, and living room. News outlets ran headlines like wildfire. "Crockett challenges Bondi," "Nation watches in shock," and "Attorney General's threat sparks backlash." Social media erupted, a digital storm of outrage, support, and heated debate, amplifying the tension that had long simmered beneath Washington's polished surface. Crockett watched the reactions unfold from her office, the glow of her computer screens reflecting in her determined eyes. Each alert, each notification was a reminder that the stakes had expanded far beyond her immediate circle. The nation was listening, and their voices would echo in the corridors of power. Outside, citizens gathered in protest, clutching signs demanding accountability, chanting slogans against corruption, and waving banners proclaiming justice. The energy was electric, a living, breathing testament to the public's desire for integrity and leadership. Crockett understood the significance. This was not mere spectacle. This was the heartbeat of democracy, people refusing to be silenced in the face of intimidation. Her chief aide approached, voice cautious yet tinged with awe. "They're responding. Across the country, people are organizing rallies, posting videos, sending letters. The public is demanding answers." Crockett nodded, her expression firm but contemplative. "Good. Let them see that intimidation fails when courage speaks louder. But we must remain disciplined. The narrative has to be clear, unassailable. We're not here to inflame, we're here to illuminate." In editorial rooms and newsroom studios, pundits debated the implications, dissecting every nuance of Bondi's threat and Crockett's defiant response. Opinion columns exploded with commentary, some painting Crockett as a fearless champion, others as a provocateur challenging the delicate balance of power. Yet one undeniable truth emerged: her actions had struck a chord, awakening a national conversation about accountability, power, and courage. Meanwhile, lawmakers on Capitol Hill whispered in hallways, the tension between public opinion and political loyalty palpable. Allies rallied discreetly, offering advice and support, while skeptics questioned the timing and repercussions of Crockett's bold stand. Every step she took was now under scrutiny, every word amplified and analyzed. Crockett stood at the window, overlooking the city as the protests swelled below. The crowd was a sea of faces, each one reflecting frustration, hope, and determination. She inhaled slowly, letting the enormity of the moment sink in. "This is why we fight," she murmured, almost to herself, "not for headlines or power, but for the principle that no one stands above accountability." Her team began coordinating press briefings, live updates, and legal commentary, ensuring that the message remained focused and clear. Every statement reinforced the narrative. Intimidation could not silence justice, and our age had a way of inspiring others to rise. As night fell, the city remained alive with the echo of public outcry, the tension thick but electric. Crockett knew that this was only the beginning. The nation had awakened, and Bondi's shadow of intimidation was now met with a tide of collective resolve that could not easily be contained. The battlefield had expanded, and the fight for truth had captured the attention and hearts of a nation. The hearing room was tense, the air thick with anticipation, and the unspoken weight of history in the making. Journalists, aides, and spectators packed the benches, their eyes fixed on the two women who now defined the nation's attention. Jasmine Crockett entered with quiet authority, her steps measured, her gaze unwavering, carrying the determination of every citizen who had ever demanded justice. Across the table, Pam Bondi sat composed, her expression cold, carefully constructed, yet betraying the slightest flicker of unease as the room's energy shifted against her. Crockett approached the podium, files in hand, and let her eyes sweep the chamber. Every camera, every observer, every whisper of anticipation became part of the tableau she was about to command. "Good morning," she began, voice steady, yet carrying the undercurrent of steel. "We are here today not to play politics, but to ensure accountability. Actions have consequences, and no one, not even the Attorney General, is above scrutiny." Bondi leaned back, the faintest smirk on her lips, a practiced display of deflection. "Congresswoman Crockett," she said evenly, "your words are loud, but accusations must be proven in a court of law, not in the media." Crockett's eyes narrowed, her voice rising just enough to assert authority without losing composure. "This isn't about conjecture, it's about documented behavior, a pattern of selective prosecution, intimidation, and abuse of power. We're here to expose it for what it is." As questions began, the room became electric with tension. Crockett methodically presented evidence, timelines, memos, and witness testimonies that mapped Bondi's actions over years. Every revelation was a calculated blow, a strike against the facade of untouchable authority. Bondi shifted uncomfortably, attempting to deflect, pivoting from topic to topic, yet the weight of facts pressed relentlessly against her defenses. A murmur rippled through the audience when Crockett detailed a specific case where Bondi's influence had overridden independent investigators, silencing concerns for political gain. "You threatened impartiality," Crockett said, voice unwavering. "You weaponized the law against citizens who dared to question you, and we have the records to prove it." Bondi's gaze flickered, her composure cracking ever so slightly. She answered with careful evasions, yet the intensity in Crockett's eyes left little room for the theatrics of obfuscation. Every gesture, every rebuttal was met with facts, timelines, and moral clarity, highlighting the stark contrast between bravado and accountability. The room's energy shifted further as witnesses, called by Crockett, corroborated the narrative. Every statement reinforced the unfolding truth. Intimidation had been attempted, but defiance prevailed. The tension was palpable, a current that pulled at every observer, binding them to the moment of reckoning. By the time the session adjourned, silence settled over the chamber, not of defeat, but of realization. The confrontation had not just exposed Bondi's threats, it had transformed them into evidence of resilience, courage, and moral clarity. Crockett had faced the storm head-on, and the echo of that confrontation would reverberate far beyond the marble walls, signaling that the era of unchecked power was being challenged with force, precision, and undeniable truth. The day after the confrontation, Washington buzzed with an almost tangible electricity. Newsrooms replayed Crockett's sharp questions, her relentless pursuit of truth, and the subtle cracks in Bondi's previously impenetrable composure. Headlines screamed across screens. Crockett exposes Bondi's threats, a turning point in accountability, and Attorney General under fire after congressional hearing. The city seemed to hold its breath, waiting to see how the powerful would respond to this unprecedented challenge. Inside Bondi's office, advisors whispered frantically, the atmosphere tense and heavy. Allies who had once stood unwaveringly at her side now wavered, caught between loyalty and the undeniable weight of public scrutiny. Each media clip, each viral clip of Crockett's confrontation had shifted the tide. Bondi's carefully curated image of authority was splintering. Meanwhile, Crockett's team worked tirelessly, coordinating press releases, fact-checking testimony, and monitoring public response. The momentum was theirs to harness. "The public is on our side," one aide said, eyes bright with determination. "They see the intimidation, and they see Jasmine refusing to be silenced." Crockett remained poised, her calm exterior a mask over the simmering intensity within. She knew the legal and political fallout would be layered and complex, but she also understood that power is fragile when exposed to truth. Her strategy was methodical. Allow the evidence to speak, amplify the voices of those affected, and let the court of public opinion weigh in alongside the formal legal system. Across the city, conversations in offices, coffee shops, and living rooms reflected a nation grappling with the implications. Citizens debated, analysts dissected, and social media amplified every nuance. Some politicians began quietly distancing themselves from Bondi, sensing that alignment with her faltering authority could be politically dangerous. Others calculated cautious statements, trying to maintain neutrality without alienating supporters. Legal challenges began to surface almost immediately. Requests for investigations, formal complaints, and congressional inquiries moved swiftly, fueled by Crockett's meticulous documentation and the undeniable public pressure. Each new development amplified the narrative that Bondi's actions were no longer untouchable, and that accountability had arrived in the form of unyielding scrutiny. Crockett walked through the halls of Congress, her presence commanding yet unassuming. Staffers greeted her with quiet nods of respect. Reporters trailed her with pens poised, and lawmakers exchanged glances that acknowledged the shift. She understood the fragility of power, the rapidity with which influence could erode, and the responsibility to wield her own authority with integrity. By evening, the city felt transformed. Washington's usual hum had gained a sharper, more charged tone, as if the confrontation had opened a door that could not be closed. Crockett stood at a balcony overlooking the Capitol, the setting sun casting long shadows across the marble. She allowed herself a brief moment of reflection. "The truth has weight," she whispered, "and the people are listening." In the unfolding fallout, one thing was clear. Bondi's empire of influence was under siege, not by rumor or political gamesmanship, but by relentless, principled defiance. The battle for accountability had begun, and the nation had front-row seats to witness history being shaped by courage, law, and unwavering resolve. Weeks passed, and the wheels of justice began to turn with deliberate, unrelenting force. Investigations, once stalled or quietly dismissed, surged forward under the scrutiny Crockett had ignited. Courtrooms filled with lawyers, witnesses, and journalists as the implications of Bondi's actions unfolded, piece by piece. The nation watched, captivated by a narrative that combined law, morality, and political tension in a way few could ignore. Crockett's evidence, meticulously documented and presented with clarity, left little room for denial. Patterns of selective prosecutions, intimidation of dissenting officials, and misuse of authority emerged in court filings and testimonies. Each revelation chipped away at the veneer of invincibility Bondi had cultivated over her tenure. In a packed courtroom, the judge's voice cut through the tension with calm authority. "The court finds that the actions under review demonstrate a breach of ethical and legal standards, undermining the integrity of the office in question." A hush fell over the spectators, the gravity of the statement reverberating through the room. For the first time, Bondi's carefully maintained image of power trembled under formal acknowledgement of wrongdoing. Outside, crowds gathered again, this time not in protest but in quiet reflection. Citizens held candles, signs, and banners celebrating accountability and courage. The story of one woman standing against intimidation had become a symbol of broader societal truth, that power must answer to law, morality, and public scrutiny. Crockett, standing at a podium after a press briefing, addressed the nation with a voice both steady and impassioned. "Justice is not a privilege of the powerful. It is the right of every citizen. Today, we see that truth and perseverance can hold even the most formidable figures accountable. This is not just a victory for Congress or foe, one office. It is a victory for democracy itself. Bondi, seated in a quiet office, now faced a network of inquiries, disciplinary reviews, and mounting political isolation. Allies who once defended her publicly were retracting statements, their loyalty fractured under the undeniable evidence and public pressure. The walls of influence that had seemed impenetrable now appeared fragile, each support system trembling under scrutiny. Within her team, Crockett allowed herself a brief private acknowledgement of what had been accomplished. The months of research, strategy, and unwavering defiance had coalesced into tangible results. Yet she knew the work was not finished. Institutional change was slow, and vigilance would remain essential. Still, the moment of reckoning, the undeniable affirmation that power does not grant immunity, was an affirmation of everything she had fought for. As the sun set over Washington, Crockett gazed out across the city, feeling the weight of responsibility and the quiet satisfaction of justice served. The courtroom, the halls of Congress, and the nation had borne witness to a confrontation that had transformed fear into accountability, threats into evidence, and silence into a resounding declaration of moral and legal clarity. In that moment, the message was unmistakable. No position of power, no office, and no threat could withstand the convergence of courage, truth, and relentless pursuit of justice. The reckoning had arrived, and the nation would not soon forget it. The Capitol dome glimmered under the first light of morning, the soft glow of dawn signaling not just a new day, but a turning point in the nation's consciousness. Jasmine Crockett stepped onto the balcony overlooking the city, her silhouette framed against the rising sun. The battle had been hard fought, the storm of political maneuvering and intimidation relentless, yet she had emerged not only unbroken, but strengthened, her resolve sharper than ever. The news cycle was alive with retrospectives and analysis. Headlines proclaimed victories of accountability, the triumph of